Welcome back to Small Caps, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Kerry Stevenson. Pretty excited today. Far East Gold, ASX code is FEG. Their chairman, Paul Walker, joins me. Now, Far East Gold only listed in March of this year, 20 cents. Now, today, I just checked it, 74 cents a share. Even in this horrible market, Far East Gold keeps defying gravity and, really delivering for shareholders. And I want to talk to Paul about that today. They have 3 projects in Indonesia, 3 projects here in Australia, in Queensland. So we're going to go through them systematically. But as I said, lots of happy shareholders at the moment. Paul, great to see you. Thanks for coming back.
Oh, it's lovely to be here, Kerry. It's great to be able to sit and talk to you about what's happening with the business and how at the moment we're doing quite well for our shareholders.
Well, and I like what you just said, for the business, because it is a business for you, and it's very much not just about exploration. This is not just an exploration play. This is a lot more than that. And that's why I want people to really listen carefully as we go through each of the projects, where you're at with them, and also we'll go further down into where the value lies for those that sitting there going, oh, I've missed out. The share price has gone to the moon. We'll talk about that later. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So let's kick it off, Paul. 6 projects. Let's start with Indonesia. At Woyla, you've started drilling. So where are you with Woyla? And talk to us about Indonesia. Are you comfortable up there? Because some people worry a little bit.
No, of course, and it's justifiable too, because if you look at the history of Australian exploration companies that have tried in Indonesia, it's mostly a series of train wrecks, to be honest.
Yeah.
And And we've tried very hard to do things slightly differently. We pulled together a really good team across the board. The majority of the board speak Indonesian, which is part of our understanding of the place and the culture. And one of my co-founders, Justin Werner, he's the managing director of Nickel Industries. That they have very successful nickel mining operations and nickel processing operations up in Indonesia. So across the team, we actually have a really good understanding of what's involved in taking an opportunity from inception, development, operation, and monetization in Indonesia. And it's a land full of opportunities. It's a land full of underexplored resources, really good natural resources and human resources available to work on these projects. And it's a low cost jurisdiction, which in the world of heavy inflation and lower gold prices actually is a real competitive advantage for us, that they're able to work on these copper gold projects in an area which is fundamentally a low cost mine development, mine operating jurisdiction. So it's oddly enough a benefit for us at the moment.
Why, before we get into your projects, if you wouldn't mind, why has everybody else seemed to crash and burn up there? Is it because they haven't understood the culture? Is it because they haven't embraced it? Or
there's a couple of factors. I mean, I think every challenge has had their own little recipe to get there. But looking back on it, a couple of the factors, I think people jump too fast when they acquire what is obviously a great little project, and they don't spend the time to get the social license required to do the works in the community. Like, for example, we've been working on the Woyla project for 2 years, and we didn't race out and drill as fast as we could. We wanted to make sure that the community was on board, governments were on board. Once we got the final license that enabled us to drill, the week after, rather than going out and drilling, we actually held a community meeting where we got the religious leaders, the community heads, head of the police, head of the military, head of the local government areas to come and meet with us and tell them, this is what we're doing. Are you comfortable? We've got the permit, but we've been telling you we're doing it. Now we're doing it. Just little things like that, I think, make a big difference. Making sure that people are on the journey with us at a local level, so that they trust us with this project and this asset and these resources that we're trying to do something with. There's another thing I think we're doing slightly differently that other people in the past have probably struggled a bit. We've only got partners at the group level for our projects. So we control all of our projects. So we make all the decisions. And some people in the past have struggled where they've had partners who've have more say over the projects than they've been able to control as an Australian listed company. And the third thing I think we're doing differently, which I think the market's responding to, is we've hedged our project risks from an operational and jurisdictional perspective by having 3 good projects in Queensland, which a lot of people in the past didn't do. They had one project, put all their eggs in one basket, and if there was a challenge, which all projects have at some point in their life, they had nowhere to turn to in terms of news flow and allocation of capital to progress the value for the shareholders.
So you feel that having Queensland and Indonesia is almost a de-risking exercise and should make shareholders feel a little bit more comfortable. Is that what you're saying?
That was our strategy, and I believe it's working that way.
All right. So let's get straight into where, I guess, the de-risking. Let's go to Woyla. As we said, drilling has commenced at Anak Perak.
Yes. So it's a really big potential project, and that's it has the makings of a potential tier 1 globally significant project. It's 24,000 hectares. The tenure we have is a thing called a contract of work. It's a 6th generation contract of work. Now, the very first one of those was actually granted to Freeport, which is the 3rd largest gold producer in the world. There's only 20 of these contracts of work for gold and minerals left in Indonesia, and we have one of them. So it's broadly considered the safest form of tenure to operate a mine. Now, what's good also about it is once we start into development and production, it's a 30-year license that can be extended by 10 years. So we've got 50 years to operate the mine up there. And so big ground, lots of epithermal vein systems. We've identified about 13 kilometres of strike length has been mapped and defined. And the assay results from early stage exploration have returned just ridiculously high bonanza grade results, up to 119 grams a tonne for gold and nearly 1,200 grams a tonne for silver. So all of the hallmarks are there for a very big project. And it's been around for about 25 years. Barrick had it to start with, then Newcrest had it. No one was ever able to drill it and progress it. And we've been able to deal with environmental issues and forestry issues. And we started drilling a week ago.
So why was it that Barrick and Newmont didn't get
Newcrest.
to do, sorry, Newcrest? Why weren't they able to do what you've been able to do in literally 2 years?
Yeah, so it's probably a combination of factors. A good team, the right team at the right place at the right time. We looked at the changes to the mining regulation framework up in Indonesia. In 2020, they centralised a lot of the mining rules back to the federal government, and we thought that was an opportunity to move this project forward. Coupled with, there's been some really good projects nearby, gold projects that have done really well for the community, both economically and environmentally. And this particular community saw these other projects and went, maybe we can do something with this as well. So there's an appetite at a local level to progress the project. There's an appetite at a federal level to simplify these sorts of rules. And so we came along and just worked on it, and were able to get the permits and start drilling.
All right, so drilling has commenced. What's the news flow going to be? I'm talking to you towards the end of September. What's the news flow from Woyla from now to the end of the year that you think will help to progress this project?
So we finalised the first 2 phases of our geophysics survey work in the Anak Perak prospect. So we will release those results, which confirm up our 2-phase drill program, about 32 odd holes. We're progressing at speed with our first phase of the drill program. Our second rig's arrived on site, so we actually have 2 rigs going across the program. So we'll have quite a lot of indications of what we're getting out of the cores to let the market know. Then we'll follow up with our assay results in the next month or so, possibly a bit earlier, out of the first few holes. But one of the things we're trying to work out is, do we bundle a large block of holes and send it off to Jakarta for assaying, or do we do it incrementally? And we want to get a feel for the first few holes, get an understanding of the metallurgy, get an understanding of the assays, and see how that's driving our program. Because at the moment we have a program which has been defined based upon a lot of early stage exploration and geophysics. We need to just make sure we're comfortable with what we're seeing out of the first few holes. So there's that. We've started geophysics surveys in another prospect called Rekrenti, which it was, in terms of early stage exploration, returning better gold grades and better silver grades than Anak Perak. So we're off doing geophysics there at the moment. We have a drill program defined, and we're just confirming whether through geophysics whether or not we're comfortable with that program in Rekrenti. So I'd imagine we'll be drilling in Rekrenti before the end of the year as well, which is having 2 prospects being explored at once. One which we have a really good understanding in terms of Anak Perak, and one which what we see in the Recrinti is potentially better than Anak Perak is sort of exciting for us. Then in terms of other projects, we've got Wanagiri, which has
just before you get onto Watagiri, just on the drilling at Woyla, how deep are you going?
So the first hole, it was only to about 90 meters.
Okay.
But our modeling had us hitting quartz at about 25 meters based on the work we've done. We actually hit it at 12 meters. And so we were pretty happy that we were coming into that sort of material sooner than we expected. We went through the quartz and we finished the hole where we expected to be. The second hole is actually, it's quite a deep and steep hole, and we're going to about 160 meters on the second hole. So we went across what we thought was the quartz veining in the first hole. Now we're going at depth through it down to about 160 meters. So we'll get a pretty good picture from the first two holes what is under the ground.
Why do you think that this area is just so rich with gold? From what I can see, is there?
That's a question for geologists who know more about this stuff than me. But what I do know is that the artisanal miners that have been working there are taking out large amounts of gold. And one of the reasons why we were focusing on that practice, they'd moved away from that prospect, and we didn't want to upset the apple cart, so to speak. Now they've also moved away from Recrinti, is why it's opened up that area for us to go and explore. We didn't think we'd be able to do that for a few years. So we'll take that opportunity while they're not there, potentially.
Okay, so you don't upset the artisanal miners, you just let them go and do what they're doing. Once they've moved off, you go in and say, well, now we'll go sort of deeper. And
of course, because we're looking at trying to define a bulk tonnage resource, which will require a large scale production and operation facility, whereas they're chasing veins through trenches and tunnels that, sometimes at depths of sort of 60, 80 meters, but it's completely different sort of operation. So once they feel as though that they've done what they can do with their picks and shovels, we'll come behind and see what we can do with drills and dozers.
It's kind of nice too. I like that. Sorry, I just wanted to find that out, and I wanted to find out the depths. So let's move on to Wanagiri, because I want to make sure we cover all the projects. You've got a scoping study done on Wanagiri, is that correct?
So yeah, there was when we acquired the project, it was really well advanced. It had a JORC resource estimate of 1 million ounces of gold and about 190 million pounds of copper. It had previously had a scoping study done back in 2016 by the vendors, and when that was done, gold was 1,350 an ounce and copper was 5,500 a ton. And we've gone and done more metallurgy work on the core samples. We've done more detailed analysis of the radiometric work, and we have a better understanding of the resource now than probably what was understood in 2016. And obviously the prices have changed. So we engaged Mining One consultants about 2.5 months ago. We expected the draft at the end of August. We've currently talking through the draft at the moment, making sure we understand their inputs and their assumptions. So we're still working through that scoping study, but I'm hoping that we'll have that locked and loaded in the next, within the next month. Be able to let the world know what the resource and potential reserve on Wanagiri looks like in terms of taking it forward from its exploration permit to a mining license. And that's our focus at the moment, is getting the environmental approvals required to upgrade its exploration permit to an operation and production license.
How difficult is that?
Straightforward.
Okay. Is Wanagiri, how far is that from Woyla? Can you move rigs around? I mean, is this all in the
No, different islands. So Wanagiri's in Java, and Woyla's on the northern tip of Sumatra. So completely different. They're both on the Sunda magmatic arc, but days away from each other.
Okay, days away from each other, not hours, days. Let's go on to Trenggalek. That's your.
So Trenggalek is only about 4 hours away from Wanagiri. It's further to the east in Java. What we like about Trenggalek is there's a number of things we like about it. It's a 12,000 hectare mining license, so we can actually theoretically build a mine on that if we want to. It's fully permitted for a mine. But
Right.
where all the work has been done has been on an epithermal prospect. And to be honest, it's not that interesting for us there. What we want to focus on is doing some exploration on some porphyry prospects that exist within the tenement. They were never explored. Anglo previously had a go at this site and did a lot of the work on this, Anglo American, and they couldn't explore in the porphyry areas because there were some forestry issues that stopped it. Now we've fixed that forestry issue as well. Again, the government's being more encouraging of exploration and these sorts of activities. The Indonesian government has categorized this project as one of the top 3 priority greenfield gold projects in the country. So they're actually going out of their way to support us with the way we're pushing forward with the approval. So our focus on this project is to do some exploration in what looks like a really interesting porphyry prospect. Why it's interesting, not only is it all of the RMA work and the early exploration work showing something that's quite interesting. It's showing very similar characteristics to a project just up the road called Tujuh Bukit. Now, Tujuh Bukit was once the Intrepid mine, which we were talking about previous challenges. But Tujuh Bukit, it has a resource estimate of 30 million ounces of gold and 19 billion pounds of copper.
At what sort of grades are we looking?
So there was a drill for copper recently in one of their porphyry plugs where from the collar to 950 meters, it was above 1% for copper for 950 meters.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So who owns that now? Is that fully?
So it's owned by an Indonesian listed company called Merdeka. So they're looking at expanding their wings in various different operations up in Indonesia on the back of the successes they're getting in Tujuh Bukit. So our Trenggalek project, similar size volcanic center to Tujuh Bukit, similar sort of magnetic signature to Tujuh Bukit, and similar sort of stone samples and drill samples, rock textures that you're seeing in Tujuh Bukit. So we're actually quite excited about the prospectivity of Trenggalek. So what's unusual for us is we're sitting here with a potential tier 1 project in Woyla and a potential tier 1 project in Trenggalek. And then we have Wonogiri, which is a great little starter and a near-term development opportunity.
So before I get down to Queensland, I said right at the start that you listed in March. Your share price today, that quite frankly, the market's pulling back and everyone's going, well, but ASX code FEG seems to be defying the odds. Is it because of the size of the projects? What do you think? And what would you say to people that said miss the boat?
Well, to be honest, I think we're not even close to where we'll end up being when we start proving up these projects. Trenggalek, 13,000 hectares. If similar sorts of characteristics to one of the biggest copper gold projects in the world nearby. Woyla, a project which has been attempted for 25 years, 13 kilometers of defined epithermal strike system with high-grade bonanza results across all of the prospect areas. We're seeing textural features in Woyla, which are the hallmarks of high-grade, high-volume systems. So we're seeing coliform, crustiform banding, which is similar to Gosowong project nearby, in Indonesia, which was a 6 million ounce, 20 grams a ton project. We're also seeing electrum in all of our deposits, so actually seeing visible gold in their samples. And we're also seeing gingaroo banding, which is something you see when you have really high-grade silver with high-grade gold. We're seeing that textural feature in all of our prospects, and that's a feature that you saw in the Hishikari project in Japan, which was 8 million plus ounces at 40 grams a ton.
Jeez.
So for someone to say, okay, you're at 70 plus cents and we've missed out, I think it's not quite seeing the potential scale of 2 of the projects. And then we have 4 other projects which can keep the machine turning if ever there's a potential issue or challenge or problem or roadblock that needs to be worked through on those projects. And everyone knows what big projects are like. They will have the occasional challenge that need a bit more love and attention than others, and we have things to work on if that ever happened.
Well, I think it's also important to point out that Far East Gold we're now going to go on to the Australian projects, and there are companies out there that would just be a company with those three projects alone. But you've now got three projects. Let's start with the first of the three, if you like, Hill 212. Love that name. You just finished drilling at Hill 212.
Yeah, so we started drilling at the end of August, and we finished the phase one drilling program about a week and a half ago. We did 11 holes, 2,000 plus meters. We chose to do RC drilling rather than diamond drilling because we wanted to not so much chase any sort of resource definition, but get a better understanding of the mineralogy and our hypothesis for that prospect. So it's got about 10 kilometers of defined vein structure, but only about 2.5 kilometers of that's been mapped. So it's still really quite early. It had previously had drilling done on it, but quite shallow drilling. So we did three things. We did some drilling to confirm some of the results from the geophysics study we did. So we did a 24 kilometer CSAMT survey, and so we put a couple of holes within that geophysics anomaly that we saw just to get an understanding of that. We also put a couple of holes in the outcropping that we'd mapped to get a better understanding of what was within the ground of what we're seeing on the surface. And then we'll put some holes really deep next to the previous holes that we drilled to a shallow extent. So we went down on three holes above 300 meters, one almost to 400 meters, because we have this model that we think that there's better grade, potentially higher grade gold at depth. So our hypothetical model is that this might mirror something like the Viranansi deposit in Pajingo, which is not too far away, which was a 3 million ounce deposit that generated, I think it was like a 15-20 year mine life with 3 million ounces and 10 grams a ton on average. So
Nice.
we don't know. So we're not chasing resource at this stage. We're just chasing understanding.
Right.
And see if our hypothesis is correct, and to see if it justifies going to the next stage of our earning expenditure.
What is that earning expenditure?
So we have three stages. We need to spend about $3 million over the three stages. We have finished stage one. We've basically finished stage two with the spend we just did on this drill, and the stage three spend is $2.2 million on the next exploration. So we need to. We've got a bit of time to finalise that. We're pretty comfortable we'll go to the next stage because we've pretty much always spent the next stage on this drilling program.
Right.
But we've got a bit of thinking to do and analysis to make sure that we progress to the 2.2 million spend in exploration. So it's pretty exciting stuff for us.
I agree, but would it ever get to the stage where you said, "Oh my goodness, Indonesia is getting so big and so amazing that we'll just let these other ones go"?
No, I don't think that's on the cards. What I think we like about Hill 212 is it's probably it's going to be quite small. If it's successful for me, it's 1 million plus ounces. It's
Right.
it's sort of a few grams a ton. That to me is a success in Hill 212, and that is also if we get some skills in developing an operating mine in Indonesia, either ourselves or with a partner, Hill 212 looks like something we could do ourselves in time. That to me is my hope is that we can prove up something that in the next 5 to 10 years, that's a mine that we actually can develop and operate ourselves.
Yeah, nice bit of cash flow from that. Let's get quickly on to Mount Clark West. What are you doing there?
So we just finished a deep ground penetrating geophysics survey called a MIMDAS survey. It had previously had some geophysics work and some drilling done on it, but the geophysics was your typical IP survey work that only went down sort of 250, 300 meters. The drilling was done from the road corridor. They didn't have the rights to access the farm, so they put it at a pretty a dodgy angle. And the interpretation is that they've clipped the edge of a porphyry system, a copper gold molybdenum porphyry system. It looks like there could be something at depth. All of the soil sampling and the other work sort of leads us to believe that there's something interesting at depth. So we went and did a 17 kilometer MIMDAS survey, and as I was saying, the depths that we got to get data from was over 700 meters. I haven't seen the interpretation of that data. it's gone away to all of the propeller heads and the boffins to pull it together and come back with a
We
3D
won't
inversion
say
of it.
that you called them propeller heads. We'll say they're
Well,
wonderful
to be honest,
people.
it's so we expect that back in the next week or so, and then we'll sit down and figure out what that means and whether it justifies either a scout drilling program or whether it justifies a much bigger program, and we'll know.
What about access to the farm?
So we've developed good relationships with the farmers, and we had the right. So when we did the MIMDAS survey, we went on one of the farms that had never allowed exploration to occur. So the farmer was fine with us for us to go and do the early stage exploration on both farms, but we don't have a conduct and compensation agreement in place to drill yet. Right. So so we need to get that on across both farms. But we've again been working really hard for the last year in developing relationships with the landowners to again get social license to enable us to drill.
And it's all about relationships. If you go in with a couple of heavy boots and say we're the miners and you have to do that's not going to work ultimately, is it? But if you come in and create relationships, it's a lot better.
And understand their concerns and their constraints. Like for example, one of the farmers, they breed very expensive cattle, and like some of their beasts can be worth $50,000 a head. And so really expensive cattle. And so for them to say we have concerns about you and your work crews coming onto our farm, it's completely legitimate. So we sat down and worked with them about how we can manage our time on the land, how we could move the cattle out of that area, have it all. So it was quite, we approached this seriously to make sure that any potential problems are mitigated before they occur.
Do you reckon that's the first time someone's properly had listened to their concerns and worked with them?
I hope not.
Sometimes we go on and go, well, look, we've got the rights to this, and off we go. You know what I mean? We go.
And I think they've had that in the past, and there was a few barriers and walls up when we sat down across the table to work through what their issues were. Again, little by little they're getting to know us and hopefully getting trust in us that we do things properly.
It is all about trust. We're running out of time, so I need to ask you about Bluegrass Creek. Is that associated with Hill 212? Is that
it is. It adjoins Hill 212. Our spectral survey work suggests that the vein system in Hill 212 extends up into Bluegrass Creek. We've just gone and looked at some of the outcroppings and done really early stage exploration work at this stage. And then our plan is to basically treat Bluegrass Creek and Hill 212 as a larger single project over time.
Okay, $7 million in the bank.
About that.
Percentage wise, is it all on Woyla, or is it how are you going to manage that?
No, it's about half of our spends on Woyla. That's the plan, and that's where it's working out at this stage. About sort of a quarter of our spends on the Queensland projects, and the balance is between Trenggalek and Wannagiri.
All right, Paul, we've almost out of time. 3 reasons why people should sit up and not get scared, not have FOMO, given your share price rise. 3 reasons, and it can't be 3 projects, 3 reasons why they should be taking notice of Far East Gold right now.
Well, we've pulled together what's quite a remarkable team and quite a remarkable set of projects. And we've said from day one, we had challenges, and when we worked through them one after the other to resolve them. And now we're doing things that no one's been able to do in the history of what is potentially a tier 1 globally significant project. So we've got a plan that we're executing. We've got assets which are potentially company making giants. And we're doing this in a sensible way, being mindful of our obligations, both the communities we operate in, the issues that potentially could arise from doing mining activities from an environmental impact perspective. We're actually setting up all of our systems and processes right from day one. As an example, we're the first listed junior exploration company to be admitted to the United Nations Global Compact, which it gives us access to plenary sessions, roundtable sessions, and an understanding of how world's best practice in this space looks. So when we're a company at the beginning, we're setting our systems and processes in place right from the beginning.
All righty. Well, Paul, it's been fantastic to chat to you once again. Congratulations on such a successful leap out of the gates since March. Wish you all the best going forward, both in Indonesia and Queensland. Come back to us towards the end of the year before Christmas and let's have another chat.
Thanks, Kerry.